Years before the Supreme Court ruled to desegregate schools across the country in Brown versus Board of Education, a giant step toward equality was reached with a similar case involving D.C. public schools, and it involved a woman named Miller. New at 11 o'clock, 7 News' Jay Korf shares her storied legacy.
I feel like most of these pictures are actually taken in this house.
For Daria Gilbert, sadness and pride sit beside each other while she recalls her beloved grandmother, Robbie Cheatham, who passed away last month at 86.
She meant everything to me.
Pride, because Gilbert's mother, Chrissy Spence, Cheatham's only child, recently made a stunning discovery while researching her mother's past, details Cheatham never shared.
I was like, oh, wow.
Deaf children of color in the district, like Cheatham, were forced to travel out of state to attend school due to segregation. But in 1952, the U.S. District Court of D.C. ruled in Miller versus D.C. Board of Education that black deaf children had a right to attend the same in-state schools as white children. What her family didn't know until recently was that Cheatham was one of those plaintiffs. Her name etched on a plaque honoring the first class of 23 deaf students of color to attend the Kendall School, which once stood on the grounds of Gallaudet University in Northeast Washington. 2 years later, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled racial segregation in public education unconstitutional in the landmark case Brown versus Board of Education.
I watched her all my life tell people, I'm a woman and I can do anything.
And Cheatham did just that, going on to work as a tax examiner with the IRS for nearly 40 years.
She was 100% a trailblazer. And I'm so proud to be able to say that.
There would be another powerful revelation for us on this night. When we drove to Gallaudet with Chrissy to see that plaque, we also arranged to meet Evan Black, the Associate Director for the Center for Black Deaf Students at the university.
Without your mom and those 23 children and their parents, there would be no Brown versus Board of Education without them. It wouldn't have happened.
Jay Korf, 7 News.
Now, celebration.
That is wonderful. That is a wonderful news story about Robbie Cheatham. We want to be able to say their names. Can we say our names? Kiana Saxon.
Amia Gawking.
Tracy Mitchell.
Aiden Alexander.
Chloe Alexander.
Skylar Witkowski.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this is Black History Month. This is the month of February. And we are celebrating not only our contemporary people who live here today, but we are also celebrating Black people who were pioneers back in many years. So what I liked about her was that she was able to be very courageous. Can you imagine yourself in that same space? I want you to put yourself in her shoes. She is young, she's a girl who cannot hear, and all she wants to do is get an education. What does she feel like? What are you feeling?
I think when you're young, or younger, especially as young as she is, you have this sort of drive and willpower and like tenacity that you kind of lose as you get older just because of experiences and like kind of like how the world programs you and stuff like that. So I think that despite her feeling the trials and tribulations that she has to go through and the roadblocks, I think that she was just really determined.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Determined is a really good word. So just to give context to what we're talking about, I want to give like a little bit of a timeline of what's taken place. 1896. So that is about 30 years after the Emancipation Proclamation of 1865. We have a ruling by the Supreme Court that was by Plessy, called Plessy versus Ferguson. And that was a ruling that declared that separate but equal was the law of the land, the law of the United States. Separate, comma, but equal. So that was a case that said in the public space, in public accommodations, people can separate by race, blacks, from whites and happened to be okay because blacks can certainly go to that water fountain. It may not be clean, but at least it's water. They can sit in our restaurant, maybe not in the front, but in the back. They called it equal. Then, do you think that was fair, by the way?
No.
Oh, it isn't.
No. If put yourself again in those shoes. If you were living under separate but equal, how do you think you would feel?
I think I would definitely feel like frustrated, cause like it's so annoying that like just because of your skin color, like you can't do certain things like that. It's really like stupid. It's like why?
Yeah, I think stupid is actually pretty applicable. Okay, so here we have 1896 through 1952. Here's the law of the land, separate but equal. Then we have Robbie Cheatham. She lives in DC. She's having to cross state lines to go to a deaf school in Maryland. Now, maybe people are saying DC is not that far from Maryland, but is it fair?
No.
I can't even imagine that. Like, I can really get to school on time. It's like up the street for me.
Exactly. I understand that. So here we have Robbie having to go to school in Maryland. Her parents say that is not fair. We at least need to have some accommodation she should be able to go to the deaf school in DC. So they file suit. DC court says, absolutely, she can go to the school in DC. What do you think was Robbie's lived experience after that case? Do you think that she was able to go to the school in DC and everything was really hunky-dory?
What is
Everything was really, do you think that everything really was just fine, that she was able to integrate fully into the school and she experienced no discrimination?
No.
Skylar, what do you think happened?
No, because they want to say like separate but equal, but it's not really equal. It's like you wanted them to be like pushed back and not really that noticed, but it's not really fair because you want people to feel like safe and equal in their space, and in that time it really wasn't.
Exactly, Skylar. So in a lot of times when we make advancements, whether it's socially or even in the legal realm, we get what's called backlash. And so Robbie certainly was a pioneer, but inside the DC school, she was actually separated. So it was intra-school segregation. Her class, the black students were put in a separate class. All right, so we're going to fast forward. That was 1952. We're going to fast forward 2 years to 1954. That was Brown versus Board of Education. Linda Brown is the girl who was the plaintiff, the named plaintiff in that suit. She wasn't the Brown family, it was actually her and her two sisters, younger sisters. They weren't the only families who were in that suit. What they did was they consolidated. They brought families together that had the same issue, were filing for the same thing, which was to break down, to make unlawful, separate but equal. Linda Brown was a third grader. You guys remember third grade?
I did not like third grade.
You did not?
I learned PEMDAS in third grade.
I remember PEMDAS too. Okay, so we have third grade. Put yourself into the shoes of a third grader. Imagine having to leave your home, pass the white school that was fully funded and knew everything, and have to go to the black school that had old everything. Everything that the white school deemed to be obsolete, old, and ready to be passed on got shipped to the black school. And that's where she made to go. She was made to walk. I listened to her own account, and she said that sometimes during the winter, the cold walk would make her tears freeze.
You imagine being able to, having to walk to and from a school that wasn't adequate for your education and you were freezing. Her parents thought that was unfair. And so they filed the suit along with other families across the nation who had the same kinds of experiences. So the Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court, now we're not talking about just the DC, we're talking about the Supreme Court of the land, the top legal judges in the entire nation said, separate but equal is inherently unfair. And it will not be the law of the land anymore. Monumental, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you think the United States said, absolutely?
No.
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 Definitely not.
Aiden, what do you think their reaction was?
I think some of the states might have started it, but didn't fully comply. Like the citizens didn't fully comply, especially the South. Like some schools were completely against it, and probably a lot of the citizens weren't with it either.
Exactly, and it's that B word again, backlash. So we have the law came, it was monumental. Everyone was rejoicing. Linda, again, we put ourselves in Linda's shoes. Linda was in the 3rd grade. It took 3 years for the decision to come down. She actually experienced none of the blessings of Brown versus Board of Education. Her 2 younger sisters, they got some of the benefit. Who was the little girl whose life was appended, whose life was now, in iconic photos? It's the little girl, she's 6 years old, who tried to test the law in the South. Do you remember her name?
Ruby Bridges.
Ruby Bridges. How old was she?
6.
She was 6. 6 years old. Brown versus Board of Education was decided in May of 1954. Ruby Bridges attempts to enter the school in September of 1954. Some people were just not happy. They screamed at her. They tried to throw things at her. They were so angry and defiant. Do you think she felt good?
No. I wouldn't feel safe.
Me either.
I wouldn't feel safe either. Go ahead.
In a book that is has Ruby Bridges in it, and a page about her in the book. It's called She Persisted, and it has a picture of people like standing like around her. Like she was right here and everyone else was right here, and there were like people like making sure that she's not being attacked. And people were trying to throw paper at her and stuff in the photo, or stuff flying around going towards her. She was just trying to walk up the stairs to go to her school.
I just feel like that's the power of hate, like that makes people even treat a 6-year-old child like that.
Exactly.
Ignorance.
Say that again?
Ignorance.
It is ignorance. And you know, one of the things that I quibble, meaning I take up issue with, or I have a problem with in the Brown versus Board of Education, the decision itself. I'm an attorney, so I'm going to actually read the entire decision. Read the entire decision, and my feeling on it is, yes, it's great. It's a monumental, it's absolutely a wonderful step. But baked into the decision itself is the idea that only the Black students will benefit from integration. That only Black students will somehow have a better experience and a better education and better outcomes with it. Chloe?
So you're saying that like Mexican students, like Asian students don't benefit from it?
Good question. That's actually not what I was saying. They did allow for races from all walks of life to be able to come to get a public school education. But the decision itself did not say that white students would benefit from integration. What do you think is damaging about segregation for the majority? We'll take people in turn. Chloe.
So, like what's damaging to the white students, majority, is that segregation causes them to think that they're superior. And it's like integration like comes in, then like there might be like some bullying and stuff.
Yes. Anything to add?
Yeah, so like you were saying, if they look down at people of color and all other races, then if you want to have an integrated community, that's not going to work because the white people are going to hate on the other people and try and do bad things to them.
Right, exactly. And I think, as we are trying to build better societies, as we are trying to go towards what Christ has called us, we're trying to be the world's church. We're trying to be a community of people who are advancing and helping people and loving people. If you are being told lies day after day, hour after hour, that somehow you are superior because of your color, you're going to be in for a very rude awakening when you see people who are not your color, who are excelling, doing well, making strides, living out their life's purpose, being excellent. And you're going to have this, what I call cognitive dissonance. Your brain is going to go pretty haywire, and you might be angry. You might be really upset, and you might not even know what to do with your feelings and processing those feelings. And we can see that today. We can see that when there are people who are trying to hold on to lies in the face of what the truth is that each one of you, you guys, all 5 of you have this light. I can see it in your eyes. You have this light, and you're going to make such world changes in your lifetime. And there are going to be some people who will look at you and not even want to acknowledge it because they have been told lies about you all of their life. And that is very damaging to the psyche. It's very damaging to the soul. And so, inherent in the decision, as monumental as it was, it bakes in a sense of inequality that I bristle. I take offense to, because all of us need to be told the truth. Every child needs to be told the truth, that irrespective of your color, background, class, how much money you make, where you were raised, what language you speak, what type of hair you have, irrespective of everything, you have the power to be able to make a difference.
Yeah, I understand what you are saying, and I agree with that, because if people really think like, I'm superior of that person, they would never succeed, and it will just be like a cycle that we will never be able to break if we don't educate them on it.
And it's that cycle that is so frustrating. It's that cycle that we have to be able to work so hard to create a different path. And so that's why we want to be able to look back. That's why it's so important to look back and to thank those who have helped us get to where we are. But then we also have to look forward and be able to see what kind of world do we want to live in and to work towards that mark.
I am Black history.
I am Black history.
I am Black history.
I am Black history.
I am Black history.